Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Photographic Memory Podcast. I'm excited to welcome the program Dr. Shannon Panzo. Dr. Shannon, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's another sunny day here.
Always a sunny day in Australia. That's not fair. But again, in Pittsburgh, we know there's not many sunny days. And Dr. Shannon, again, is a photographic memory expert, a brain management expert, and also does mentoring. Please visit him at zuxpro.com for more information and also can check him out by Googling him. So, Dr. Shannon, I'm really excited about our guest today because he's going to tell us the history of just people that have been involved in your life as well, and talking about brain management and how he's used brain management in his life to that has led into what the Zux Pro method is for how he uses mental photography and some of the other processes. So I'm excited to welcome the program Aagee Nost, author, podcaster, radio host. Aagee, what's up? Thanks for stopping by.
Well, hello, hello. I am with you here from sunny Tucson, Arizona.
Fantastic. So, Aagee, from what I've heard from Dr. Shannon is you ran into Dr. Richard Welch as well. So, kind of go into that process as we brought up in episode one about the history of mental photography, photographic memory, and how Dr. Panzo learned from Dr. Richard. How did you guys, and you have trained in the brain management style, but also train people in it back in the day? So as Aagee, we could see that's why you use that anti-aging, because you sure as heck don't look how old you possibly could be. So go ahead, Aagee, with the whole process of how you got learned about brain management and how to use mental photography.
Oh boy, I don't even know how to start with that one because it's such a big subject. I think it dates back close to 30 years ago when I met Dr. Richard Welch in Omaha, Nebraska. I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and we were kind of ended up going in the same circles. And he was always a kind of fun guy, an interesting guy to be around. So we kind of drew each other to each other. And we figured it out after a bit that we wanted to work together because I was dealing with some of the things that he was talking about. And I went through the training course and I became an instructor. And then I ended up traveling around the United States for about a year or so and teaching this course. And I had some phenomenal experiences by doing that. I tell you, this course has done so much for me. This was close to 30 years ago, but it also helped me in a lot of the things that I've done later. I've done a lot, and I know a lot of these things I probably would not have accomplished unless it was for this, what I learned here, the model and the methods of structuring the subconscious mind to support what we are doing consciously from the conscious understanding and the conscious mind. So I think that's how it started anyway.
Very interesting. Now, Dr. Shannon, explain to me how you met Aagee, and how, because is that how you guys connected?
Well, uh, essentially, Augie's been around pretty much as long as I've been around, and so it's nice to always hear a similar story coming from a person that has been affiliated in a very similar method with regards to my mentor, Dr. Richard Welch. And Augie was there teaching with Dr. Richard Welch. I started teaching with Richard Welch after the fact, after Augie was, and Augie had his own things that he was doing, so he moved on to those things. But he definitely has some interesting stories to tell when it during the time that he was actually involved in in his instructorship with Richard Welch himself. So, and also I want to point out something, and Augie's already made indication of this. And that is, people often ask me, Shannon, how has this changed your life? Well, yes, it has changed every last aspect of my life. I am leading a completely different life than I had ever presumed that I would through the use of this process. And it's a much richer life, much more overall wealth and prosperity in the understanding that I have in the world. So uh, so I have actually gained tremendously through this process. Augie also has made similar gains. And that's what he alluded to before, is the fact that if it wasn't for this training and what it did for him, he wouldn't be where he is today doing the things that he's doing. It would have been a completely different life for him. Would you agree with that, Augie?
Oh, absolutely. I do concur in many different ways, because back in the early days, about 30 years ago, so let's just back when there was Richard Welsh and me. We were doing it on our own out there, and of course he had some previous history where he has great successes within the even the education system. But what we learned is that it doesn't matter where people come from
Okay.
and what they do before, because once you learn the process, it works for everybody, because pretty much everybody has the same kind of brain. And the brain is just a tool for the mind. So it doesn't just work for the brain, it also works for the mind. So the two of them together create something that normally people would think would be impossible, how we can use the mind. And yeah, you mentioned that I, I have some stories. Boy, do I have some stories. There is, I don't know where I would want to start. There's two stories I really like to mention because they are so descriptive of what can really happen. There was a class we did in Omaha where there was a kid that came to class. He came on a skateboard. He was about 17, 18, maybe 19 years old. I kind of looked that way. And he was so dyslexic, he could not even read hardly at all. We do a reading test and we give them 5 minutes and see how many words they read. He was pretty much down the first paragraph after 5 minutes, and he couldn't remember a thing that he read. But when we ran him through the course at the end of the week, he was performing with the rest of the class. There was no difference. They scored in the 85 to 95% on books that he has never seen before, and he just flew through the book at 2 pages a second. And when we give them tests afterwards, it shows pretty much those results just about every time. Now, afterwards, we were talking and he said something about, I don't know what I should do, he says, because where am I going from here? And I knew a diamond cutter over in Antwerp, the Netherlands. And this kid he was doing, games and stuff, and he was pretty sharp, actually. He just couldn't read. And I suggested, I'll get back to you. So I talked to my friend over in Europe, and he was a diamond cutter. He was old, and he was about to retire, and he needed somebody to work with to take over, basically, because he had nobody. And I suggested to him, do you need, somebody to help you out? And he said no, but I talked him into it, and I suggested to the kid, go over there, work with the guy. He couldn't pay him. He wouldn't pay him actually anything for the first few months at least, so that he could learn the trade. The kid went over there, and I think it was about 10, 15 years later, he got a hold of me and he thanked me, because he said, I would never have been able to do what I'm doing today, he says, because he had then taken over the business and he was well over $500,000 converted dollars in income that he did every year, and he was very happy. See, this kid, he was here basically. I hate to use the word worthless in the workforce because of his mind, but when he had gone through this course, learned how to structure the mind so he could work it and concentrate in the right areas where he needed to, he became an expert at what he did. And
Wow.
this is really something that this kid, because this course can do away with dyslexia. And that is another thing.
That's
Like
crazy.
these
Yeah.
days, yeah, a lot of people have dyslexia.
Yeah, this
I
could really
think
help
I
in
even
some
have.
ways. And so you were at the time when Richard Welch really was groundbreaking in finding this, right? To work with kids with
Yeah,
dyslexia and be able to have them that couldn't read, didn't have the ability to read, to use his method in brain management to get these kids to be able to understand material. It's not read, but understand it so that they could answer questions and stuff, right?
yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah, and there's another quick story that I want to mention because it relates to what I used to do. Born in Europe and came out to the United States to become a professional pilot, and I did that. And I flew for a living for 23 years. As my had my own business in flight school, international air taxi, and an air carrier. And after I retired from that, me and Richard went out to Denver, and we taught the class to a flight school out there where there were mostly students. Actually, biggest part of the student class was from other countries, and that involves language barriers and things like that. You don't think just by coming here, you don't think in English. You can read something in English and you got to transfer it back to your own language to understand it. And then, if you talk to someone else, you got to get out of your own language memory and translate that into English words. So this gets a little convoluted. But after that, they went through the course, they accelerated phenomenally. And they started to, on their tests that they had to do for different aviation certificates, they scored in the high 90s. And this became suspicious to the FAA. So they came to the school and asked them, what are you doing? Your students are performing abnormally. And normally, that would be a negative, but in this case, it was a big positive because they're scoring so high. They were wondering if they were cheating. And, the chief flight instructor, he explained it to them what they have done, and it kind of drained away from there, that nothing really happened in repercussions against the school because they looked into ZocPro a little bit and they found that, yeah, maybe there is something here that they can do. So the FAA went away on that, but there was also things that happened at the school that really enforced what a mind that is trained in this way can do. There was one incident that the chief pilot told me afterwards. We became good friends, and we were talking for months and months after that we did the class with him. And he told me that he was in the airplane with a student. He was the instructor in the right seat, the student in the left seat, which is normally the captain's seat. And they were in a King Air, and up on top of the glare shield over the instrument panel in the cockpit, there is a row of lights that if something goes wrong anywhere in the airplane, the light comes on and flashes at you, and it won't turn off until you push it and shut it off. And in this incident, they were in the clouds, and the students were on the instrument, just looking at the instrument straight ahead, and one of the the lights on the glare shield just flashed really quick once and then turned off.
Wow.
It's not supposed to do that. So but the student caught that, And immediately, from what the instructor told me, that either slightly before or at the time the light flashed, the student moved his hand to the thrust levers because there was on the right engine that there was something wrong. So he was going to be ready to move the thrust lever back and shut it off in case something happened. And then, nothing happened. So he also immediately moved down and pushed the circuit breaker in, which was just intuition on how, because that is non-procedure. You're supposed to wait for a second or so to see what happens on the panel. But he was ready, either slightly before the light flashed or at the time the light flashed, to secure that engine. And this happened so quick in a matter of about 2 seconds. And that is also a little too quick than what normally would happen. But he was very alert. And this is some of the things that also happen. You can have a premonition, and I have had that many times, of things that will happen. I have a premonition right before, so I could be ready for it.
So, Dr. Shannon, so that's part of brain management, is be able to anticipate things before they happen, Dr. Shannon. Is that correct?
Right. Whenever you tune up the brain this way, we talk about it whenever we're talking about awareness and perception, and this has to do with the peripheral vision, things like this. This is exactly what happens is you start anticipating life before it unfolds actually for you. You can actually reverse time, where you actually see things happening in advance of them actually playing out. And this is a wonderful ability. And this is why emergency workers and such really need to take this on board,
Right.
because it makes them so much more effective and efficient in their job. They can anticipate whenever a problem's going to occur.
And just a little while ago, I mentioned the brain and the mind. Now, reverting back to what I mentioned about that he may have moved his hand to the thrust levers before the light flashed. Theoretically, according to Newtonian physics, he should not have had that warning. But quantum mechanics explains it, because in the equations of quantum mechanics, everything is connected, because we are also, through the mind, not just the brain, but the mind, we are also connected to the future and the past. Quantum mechanics back me up on this. So what the student felt, he felt there was something wrong with the right engine, and he reached for the thrust levers, and then the light either flashed at that time or slightly before, as the chief pilot told me. So this is explainable.
Right.
And it's not easy to understand, but it is explainable using quantum mechanics as a backdrop for your understanding of it.
Excellent. Oh, wow. This is just very, very interesting information. Dr. Shannon, anything else to ask Aagee before we're close to running out of time? We could go into 3 parts with Aagee regarding brain management.
Okay. Well, what if when it comes to brain management, mental photography, and the things, what would you consider the most important part of what is presented here?
The most important part is probably, what for myself, is a 2-part. First of all, access to information and memory. Because when you fly through a book at 2 pages a second, going through it in 5 minutes, you take a mental picture of those pages, totally bypass the conscious mind, stick it into long-term memory, and there it is. Just like anything else, when you want to, you don't walk around every day knowing everything in long-term memory. If you did, you couldn't do anything. You'd be flushed. But when you start using the triggers, you can bring all of that out of there. Just like any other book that you sit down for 3 days and read, you have access to it. And this is something, the 1 year that I traveled around teaching the course, I probably read anywhere from 1,000 to about 1,200, 1,300 books that
Wow.
year. And of course, I'm using the word reading because it's the word we
Yeah, I
understand.
mean,
It
that's
isn't reading
amazing
anymore.
to think 12 to 1,300 books. And Dr. Shannon
Yeah,
explained to me in one of the other episodes, if you are reading three different types of things, it's harder to understand it completely. You really have to pick the right books to read, right? Or to photograph. Isn't that right, Dr. Shannon? It can't be three of the same option that's in different
Well, there
stances. Yeah.
we have ways of dealing with that. Uh, Basically, let's say you're photographing three dictionaries, and one's red, one's green, one's blue. Well, we can actually utilize the color of the book to disseminate which one is which so that you're not mixing up the files. This is like literally like a filing system. And that's how it's approached. You're literally plugging in a file of that entire book into where you're going. This
Wow.
also accommodates you learning multiple languages, and we have people doing
yeah,
this
Okay,
as
how many
well.
languages do you know, Dr. Shannon?
Well, fluently only one English, because that's all I really feel that I need at this time. But the point is I've photographed multiple languages. I just haven't had the opportunity to go out there and situate myself with recall. So
Gotcha.
that's fine too.
All right, Doctor. Augie, best place we can connect with you, purchase your books, and learn more about you. Where can we go?
okay, well, a good place to connect with me is through one of my websites. It's called Broadcast Team Alpha, broadcastteamalpha.com, and also on YouTube under Broadcast Team Alpha. And there is one book there that probably I've written a few, and one of them that I maybe want to mention because it can help people a lot in a lot of areas of their life, and that is called Spiritual Science, Higher Conscious Thinking, and How to Access the Universal Consciousness. What I do in there, I teach people how to use their minds in ways that you normally would think would be impossible, and gives them also an understanding of how the universe works and why it works, and also what we are. I said what, I don't mean who,
Right.
because when it really comes down to the science of it, there is no who, there is only what we are.
And for Dr. Shannon, zuxpro.com, right? Zuxpro.com and brainmanagement.com. Those two, right?
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, appreciate
And
both.
I have my own book on consciousness as
Yeah,
well.
I'm reading it now, so we'll have to
We'll
talk about a portion of the book on next episode. I've read a couple pages. I'll be prepared for our next episode to go into the book a little bit. Okay, so
okay.
you'll see how's my memory without photographing things, but reading them. So I appreciate you guys both stopping by the Photographic Memory Podcast. It was a great show and unbelievable information. It makes everyone want to go to zuxpro.com right now. But if they're interested in mentoring as well, go to zuxpro.com as well. I'll take care, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, that was a Photographic Memory Podcast.
Hey,